This episode of the podcast has been brought to you by Sweet Cheetah Publicity. Sweet Cheetah is an inclusive, socially conscious PR collective that puts their money where their mouth is. They have a current roster of bands that reads like a greatest hits anthology. Brainiac, Catholic School, Jawbox, The New Amsterdams, Oceans in the Sky. I mean, the list goes on and on. They also do PR for record labels such as A La Carte, Arctic Rodeo, Steadfast, Rad Girlfriend, and so many more. How do they pay it forward? How do they put their money where their mouth is? By generating thousands of dollars in annual charitable donations to the likes of Women in Vinyl, Coalition of Communities of Color, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and many, many more. The man has the receipts. I've seen them. It is real. The artists, labels, and podcasts Sweet Cheetah works with are curated with an eye on working primarily with friends. You could find Sweet Cheetah on all of the social media platforms, be it Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just look for Sweet Cheetah PR and they will be there. He's been Tim, I've been Peter, and Sweet Cheetah has been beautiful. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. I am your host, Peter, and I am still here. And tonight, alongside me, I have Tommy Ratz from Toilet Rats to speak about the new record entitled 4. This is an album for not only the punk rockers out there, but, you know, the post-punkers, the people who love everything left of the dial musically. It's got a sense of humor, but beneath that sense of humor there is a darkness to it, almost. A longing, a sadness that we get into extensively in this episode. I think you're really going to love Tommy because he is an affable gentleman and he creates excellent music all by his lonesome. For everyone who's been keeping up with us, my releases have become a bit more sporadic, and for that I apologize. This time of year gets a little wonky because my wife and my son both have birthdays very close together, and you know, it gets tough. So I release when I can right now. We will get back to releasing on Friday nights in about another week. Until then, I'm going to be releasing multiple episodes per week. Depending upon the day, I may release 2 a day. Because we are moving through a lot of episodes that I had been sitting on that I absolutely cannot any longer because people have records to promote, books to promote. I don't want to hold them up. I would also like to apologize for the fact that I don't sound like myself. I am under the weather. But I'd like to remind you all that the best thing you could do for me, if you want to help and you enjoy the show, you can do any number of things, but the most important thing being listen wherever you can, be it YouTube, some podcatcher, Spotify, Amazon. I'm on all of those. You can find me everywhere. What else can you do? You can go onto my Facebook or Instagram and share my posts about episodes, about anything really. And that helps me get into the algorithm more. You can donate to me on PayPal or Venmo. You can become a paid subscriber, which you get all kinds of fun extras that I've beaten them to death. If you're a listener, you know what I'm offering. But there is some nice stuff involved with that. Furthermore, if you like, rate, review, and subscribe on whatever platform you decide to listen to me on, that is a big help. That's a massive help. Also gets me into the algorithm that I don't understand because I'm far too old and I don't have the bandwidth. That being said, I will have some selections from Toilet Ratz 4 included in the episode tonight for your listening pleasure, along with this beautiful, dark, ambient music that is beneath my voice that was made specifically for this show by the group Gown. They've been on before. They'll be on again. We're eventually going to do a music project together as well. Love those guys. Want to shout them out. And coming up in a few short days, I have some incredible episodes coming your way. I've been teasing them on Instagram. I'm excited. Things are getting really, really, really fun for me with this show. And I hope you all like who I've had on and who I will have on. So, with all of that being said, without further ado, I give to you Tommy Ratz of Toilet Ratz for the album 4 on the book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast.
Scrapbook of fatalities. My revenge fantasies. Met you on frozen ground. Feel so lost and can never be found.
You need to stand up for yourself. Speaking code through the walls. Blood path awakens me.
Tommy Ratz, legal name Thomas Rabine. You have permission to record the podcast, and I will not sue you for dollars or anything.
Wonderful. I have to tell you, I know your other work, obviously. 4 is the best thing you've ever done, and it also has the best 1-2 punch opening into second song, which is also the single, from Haunted House into Carol Kane. What a transition. What a great introduction to an album.
Oh, thank you.
What I really love about this, and I've liked your work beforehand, obviously. What I really love about this is it's got an almost danceable element that you alluded to in the past, but it's really at the fore for this particular record. You know, it has a lot of motion. This record has motion. It has kinetic energy.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate that about it, because outside of, obviously, if you could see the music around me, being a punk rock hardcore human, I also love
I see that Cure Wish album.
Yeah, exactly. I grew up on, I'm 47 years old. I grew up on The Cure, The Smiths, Lycia, a lot of dark wave and proto-goth stuff. And what I also appreciate about your record is I could tell you like all of that sort of stuff, but I could also tell you like the Stooges,
Yeah.
and Iggy Pop, and I read some, leanings toward 80s hardcore and stuff, all in the context of this album.
Yeah, it's all there.
So I guess what I'd like to start with is maybe start with where you started, where Toilet Ratz started. What was
Sure.
what were you trying to put across when
just Twilight Ratz starting in general, like the origin story.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, okay. So I've been in different bands over the years, and the most recent band was called Robo Sapien, and it was very Devo-y.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of when the world stopped spinning, we kind of quit getting together. And then I needed something to do, and I was just I'm going to take this time to build my skill sets. I really want to like kind of learn how to record. So I just started writing these songs. I'm like, I'm gonna write dumb songs because that way if the recording's bad, it's not a big deal.
Right.
So those become my, and also like, there was a lot going on. You know, we had, you know, George Floyd was murdered. We had the uprising. We had, we couldn't go anywhere. You know, everyone's. I don't know how many people I know who've died in the last few years, and you know, including a family member. So it was just like everything was just miserable. And well, I do believe in participating to make the world better. I think sometimes you do need to come up for air.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, you know, I'm gonna like write the dumbest songs I possibly can, almost as sort of just a way to make myself laugh and just kind of have some fun and have something to look forward to. And so that's kind of how it started. And then there's a friend that I've made from California who does several recording projects, but one of them is Strange Visitors. And we just got to talking like, hey, we should do a split because, you know, I think each one of us could probably get rid of like 15, 20 tapes. And I was originally going to like press tapes at a, you know, professionally, but they were so expensive and the wait times were so long that I just ended up dubbing them in the garage and then slapping stickers on them, which, you know, but anyway, like, so we did that. And then I just kind of kept writing songs for it because it's like, well, my other band's not getting back together. Because no one's like hanging out yet. So I just kept writing songs. And I was really self-conscious about it at first. I'd show some friends. I'm like, yeah, this is kind of a silly thing I'm doing. It's called Toilet Rats. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
But then after a while, I'm like, screw it. Like, I'm having fun. And anybody who knows me knows I'm very goofy. I mean, you saw me a minute ago hitting my head on the microphone.
Sure.
It's like, I just kind of like that. Like, I'm sort of slapstick and like silly, and I like just goofy things. So so that's kind of the origin story.
And taking that into consideration when listening to this record, there's nothing silly about it. Like, legitimately, I don't glean anything silly from it because it is that well written.
Oh, thanks.
I actually I also write for a few different publications, one of which being offshelf.net.
Okay.
And I'm including this record in my I basically write about post-punk and that ilk month by month, about the bands that have really, you know, caught my ear month by month. Okay. This is definitely making it to that list. Not that it's a vaulted thing, but you know, I find this to be one of the most refreshing pieces of music I've heard in quite a long time, because it's not up its own ass, but it's still, there's still a seriousness to this. And your other records, yes, you were having fun. It was obvious. And I had fun vicariously through it. This feels like a really honest attempt at a very austere record. You know, it's so well written. I can't drive that point home enough, that I really think, had you the I guess the distribution, this would be vaulted in the same category as your Soft Kills and bands like that, because it really does resonate in the same way. And this, like, there's almost like a John Carpenter feel. Almost.
Yeah, definitely some Carpenter going on. Yeah,
I absolutely love that growing up in the 80s when I did, because that's, The Thing is like probably my all-time favorite movie, one of the best soundtracks ever written. And you know, you treat the synth really well. You use it sparingly, but well.
Well, thank you. I got to let the cat in. She's like, something cool's going on and I'm not involved and I'm upset about it. So give me 1 second.
Absolutely.
Come here, buddy. Come on. Sorry.
I have 3 cats and 3 dogs. I understand.
Yeah, so this is Audrey. She usually hangs out. Well, she'll flop in this floor. She usually hangs out when I'm in this space.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm ever in here and the door's closed, she's like, "Why let me in? Why am I not part of this?" And I actually have to put a cat bed on the desk so we're like at eye level.
That's amazing.
It's pretty funny. Well, yeah, no, I really appreciate it. The truth is, I was goofing around on this record just as much as I was on the other ones. But I think the last record I put out, like that song Malgoth, got like a very strong response. And some of my friends were like, dude, you shouldn't be self-conscious about this. This is like a good song. There's a good story. And like it's legit. And I was like, wow. So I think writing this most recent record, I think I just went into it with more confidence.
It's obvious.
And I just embraced it. I'm like, yeah, it's called Toilet Rats. Yeah, there's like kind of a pink slime thing going on. And like that song Nessie is like extremely silly. But even though I'm having fun and I'm goofing off, I still wanted it to be like well written, well produced. And usually in the past, if I wanted a really well produced recording, even if I tracked it myself, I would usually farm it out to someone else to do the mixing and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Noel in town that I have him mix almost everything I do. But this time around, it was just really about sort of like, nope, this is a skill set that I really need to hone. I just really need to learn it. And so I like mixed it myself. And I had a couple friends who are engineers where I'd send them some mixes and they'd be like, yeah, it's almost there, but you need the drums are a little boxy, do this or do that. Or like, you know, my friend KJ, who ended up doing like the final master just to give it like kind of a slick sheen across the top. He was kept telling me to turn up the vocals because I think a lot of people, when they record their own vocals, they bury the vocals because they're
self-conscious.
Yeah.
Exactly. I fall victim to it constantly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think I just went into this one a lot more confidently. But I had a lot of fun writing it.
I think Haunted House, especially, like, you know, I know Carol Kane's like the single, but I think Haunted House, it's the perfect opener for this record because it kind of like includes all of the elements that were used in the sauce of the whole record. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like every aspect, every genre that you touch upon, because there are songs on here that are very reminiscent of like Iggy Pop's The Idiot.
Yeah, I can see that.
And all of that kind of gets peppered into that song.
Well, it's funny, that song, I was really kind of wanting to write something that had like a Dag Nasty chorus.
Uh-huh.
Like Revolution Summer, like Dag Nasty, or like the late government issue before they broke up, or like One Last Wish. So that's what I was really going for on the chorus. But like when I originally wrote it, there were a bunch of guitars in the verses and stuff, but I just ended up like, I tend to write stuff and then subtract instead of piling more stuff on. And I ended up pulling a bunch of stuff out of the verses, and then I thought to myself, like, this song would be a lot cooler if the bass line was done with a arpeggiated synth. And then, I don't know, yeah, it was kind of funny that song was kind of constructed backwards from like 80s Revolution Summer DC vibes. But I don't think the end product really turned out that way. But that's where I started.
Well, I mean, there's definitely a Fugazi, Dag Nasty aspect to the chorus. But I think in its essence, there's like an echo in the Bunnyman song in there.
Yeah, I can hear that.
In all reality, and I mean that obviously is going to catch my ear, but you know, like I like the fact that you don't oversaturate it with walls of sound. You allow the song to breathe, and that grants it power. So I guess what I'd like to ask about all of that is, when you go into the recording process, you said that you subtract. Do you start out with like just throwing everything but the kitchen sink at it?
It kind of depends on the song. I kind of have to get into that sort of writing, creating mindset, that like really focused space. It's hard for me to get there, and but once I get there, I work quickly, and I just try out a lot of ideas while I'm in the headspace, and then I sleep on it, and I'll come back to it, and I'll just decide like there's too much going on, or like oh, there's a really good guitar lead here, but I think the synth lead is way catchier, so I'm just gonna omit the guitar lead. Or sometimes I write a lead on guitar, and then I decide I like the melody, but there's already a lot of guitar on the song, so I'm gonna use a synth. So you know, it just depends. Or like sometimes I write something on a Moog, and I'm like, the Moog's cool, but everyone's got Moogs on stuff right now, so I might run a Casio through a metal zone or something instead, just to get like a slightly different kind of thing from what everyone else is doing currently.
What's cool about that is I think there's nothing wrong with a good Casio tone. In all reality, you know,
I love Casio stuff.
It has its own charm, and people don't.
Well,
it's underutilized.
It's sort of treated like a novelty thing. Like, I mean, going back to like my friend Strange Visitors, or this band from Sweden, I think they're from Sweden, called Leeches.
Yeah.
You know, they use a lot of that, just kind of like thrift store keyboards, run through pedals or whatever, or you know, and I don't think it's a novelty. I'm just like, no, you found this tool and you found a way to make it work for what you're doing. And so I think even though my stuff is cleaner than, say, like a Leech's record, like,
yeah,
or a Strange Visitors record, or like a Power Plant record, that stuff still like influences me a little bit, in the sense where like I'm gonna try to dig a little bit more for like an organic, grimy tone, instead of just hitting some preset.
Yeah, and what's cool about that is it gives it a personality. So it's not like some dude just grabbing a synth and hitting a sine wave note forever, and having that be, this is the mood. Oh, like this is like a dark ambient because I'm hitting one note. I've heard that a million times. We all have.
You know, there's a time and place for it. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm inventing a new genre, or think of myself as like have some delusion of grandeur of what I'm doing. They're 4-chord songs about monsters. But that stated, you know, I've made an effort to. So like a lot of groups that do post-punk, they might do it really well, but it's like a very good emulation of Echo and the Bunnymen, or a very good emulation of Joy Division,
or the Chameleons. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the Chameleons, and like I love those bands, but like I don't want to sound like another band from LA that just like Xeroxed the Chameleons, like because I like, you know, like what we were just saying, like I love like 80s hardcore and Jawbox and stuff like that, and but I love the Cure, and I love all kinds of stuff, and it all just shows up, and sometimes it all shows up in the same song, and
that's the other part that I think really caught my ear, was the fact that, you know, you could tell like somebody who listens to like Shudder to Think and someone who listens to the Chameleons would get something out of this. You know, there's an embarrassment of riches as far as your influences are concerned. And that's fun for me because I share the same musical touchstones as you.
Yeah.
But I think it comes across to maybe the untrained ear as just, you know, a lot of fun packed into a very small space. And ultimately, one does not have to have the same pedigree that I do as far as music curating, collecting, and listening.
Sure.
Get out of what you're doing what I do. I mean, there's also like the horror movie element to all of it, which is also near and dear to my heart. And it makes me wonder, what were you watching that kind of like made you want to write songs about monsters and things like that?
Well, look at me, dude. I'm like a Hesher. Like I'm it's funny, I'm like playing this like synthy pop music, but I look like I'm selling weed out of a Camaro. And but there is a little bit of that selling weed out of a Camaro character in what I do, because I grew up in a I grew up in a town like that, and there's like there's not like when I was a kid, there's nothing to do, except bike into town. And when I biked into town, I would usually go to the video stores, and this is way back in the day when they still had VHSs when I was a little kid.
Yep.
And I would basically go in there and just like bug the guy that worked there, like, do you have any posters? And like guys had like horror movie posters, and I always thought they were cool. And I had 3 older brothers, so they'd rent the stuff, and I wasn't supposed to watch it, but of course I'm going to watch it. And
sure.
And so like I've always been sort of fascinated with like the mythology of horror movies and monsters and science fiction. And it's kind of fun now, like in Minneapolis where I live, there's like an organization that rents a movie theater out in a suburb, and like every Monday night you can just go see some like classic horror movie for $6. And it's really fun because if you look around the theater, it's like all kinds of people.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the vibe I sort of wanted for this record. I want to be able to give this record to people that don't even know what punk rock is, but like might live in the middle of nowhere and dig horror movies, and they're gonna have just as much fun listening to it as like the super hipster like gothed out kid, you know, like
yeah.
Well, yeah. I think the horror element like makes broadens the appeal, which is good because the genre wise it's sort of niche.
Well, what were the horror movies that really kind of like grabbed you when you were young like that?
Okay.
Because like the way you explained it, VHS was when you were young. I remember when it happened. I was already like 9 or 10 years old when VHS became a thing, like a real thing. And we rented movies from hardware stores, being from small town Pennsylvania.
Totally.
Yeah, like that's how it happened. And it was invariably mostly horror films, a couple action flicks, and a wall of porn that I couldn't get to quite yet. So like we were going through like, you know, Slumber Party Massacre. We were going through like all of these really obscure, like Microwave Massacre, movies like that were made for VHS, that never saw a theater, that never had a budget, you know. And I consumed these things at such a vast clip that it became culturally synonymous with my punk rock awakening in the late 80s.
Yeah.
They went hand in hand, you know? So when I was in that age group, the first filmmaker outside of Kubrick that kind of really resonated with me was Lucio Fulci. You know, Zombie, City of the Living Dead. Well, oh my God. It's my favorite Fulci film. They're in Louisiana. Oh God. It'll come to me. But like that oeuvre of absurdist horror captivated my spirit because it was like looking at a Goya painting in action, you know. And I wonder who were the filmmakers? What were the films that resonated with you the most at that age?
Well, I'm not like as huge of a film buff as some, but like obviously the John Carpenter stuff, the Wes Craven stuff, and then like I kind of grew up in the sticks, and so some of the more obscure or some of the more art house stuff we don't have access to, but like like the Friday the 13th stuff, and I remember we had this little movie theater in our town, and Jason Takes Manhattan was there, and my friend and I went, and we were like the only 2 people in the theater. And we were kids, so we were all like, just being hyper and running up and down the aisles and stuff. But yeah, all that stuff, and then like the Alien movies and The Fly.
Cronenberg's Fly. Oh man, what a good movie! What a good.
Yeah, like Videodrome. Like Cronenberg's weird. It's fun.
I love him. I love him so much. He's in my top 5 for certain. But
not like like for me though, like the Romero zombie series were like a big deal to me. And there's a song about Dawn of the Dead on the record called "Walk the Earth."
Yeah.
It's from the movie tagline, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more room in hell to
In
get a
hell.
locker.
Yep.
So yeah, those definitely left a mark on me. And then as a kid, I always really liked listening to like Art Bell on the AM radio.
He's one of my favorite, like one of my inspirations for this.
Yeah, so there was
Is Art
horror,
Bell.
and there's like Art Bell, and because of Art Bell, because back then, like conspiracy theories were fun. It was some like wacky guy who saw an orb,
Yeah.
versus what conspiracy theories are now, which is like some really crazy right wing stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But like, I really liked Art Bell, and because of that, like I liked like the old school Twilight Zone and stuff. So yeah, I kind of grew up, because of having older brothers, grew up with a lot of like 70s and 80s horror movies, and then like the sci-fi was sort of adjacent to that.
Yeah.
And yeah, like no super deep cuts, except maybe like the Phantasm stuff. I've always loved.
I love everything Don Coscarelli ever put his hands on, up to and including Bubba Hotep and John Dies at the End. Like everything that guy did, I love.
I didn't know that Bubba Hotep was the Phantasm person.
Yeah, Don Coscarelli, absolutely.
Oh wow! So I'm gonna have to go out and rewatch Bubba Hotep.
Yeah, it's worthwhile just for the absurdist storyline of Bruce Campbell thinking he's Elvis. He thinks he's Elvis.
He's Elvis.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to think. Well, vampires were pretty big. Like Lost Boys and all that stuff.
Sure.
There's a song on the record, Oscar and Ellie, and so that song's like about Let the Right One In.
Yeah,
I thought it'd be cool to have like a I kind of wanted like a ballad on the album, but to me a ballad means it sounds like The Cure. It doesn't mean it's slow.
Yeah.
Like on the last album, Molgoth was the ballad.
Yeah.
So this album, Oscar and Ellie's the ballad. And so I kind of wrote it singing as the characters. And then I was just thinking, like, it'd be really cool to have someone else sing the other character. So I reached out to this band called Pumpkin Guts that I'm friends with. And I was just like, hey, do you want to take the second verse and do some harmonies at the end? And they did, and it turned out really cool. And I like making friends doing this stuff and collaborating. So that was really fun.
I think that's a great way to sort of attack subject matter like that too, because when you're talking about like a vampiric love story, Let the Right One In is probably one of the most demented.
Yeah.
As far as an interpersonal relationship between vampire and I guess familiar. I don't know how you'd really describe that relationship, because she was protecting him from bullies and the like. So there's an altruism to the love, but you see the end result of her love towards the beginning of the film, right? Like, sure, she's caring for this guy, but ultimately she's using him to keep her alive.
Yeah.
Keep her out of the sun. And that's where he's ultimately headed. You know what I mean? Like, so it's is it love? Not really. It's something.
Yeah, it's a cool story, and to me it seemed to make sense to be the premise of a ballad, using air quotes.
Yeah.
And in true Robert Smith fashion, it's like not going to be a normal ballad. There's going to be some like something twisted about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
so it seemed to work.
And I think that's kind of like the through line for the whole record. It all works in context. And lyrically speaking, you're not like, normally when I deal with artists, these are almost always people coming from very tortured, psyches. I think with you, even though you may very well have that tortured psyche, this is legitimately more of an outlet for your more playful, creative side. You're not venting demons here. You're not bearing your soul, but you're engaging with a youthful, playful aspect of your id that's just as important and more fun. It's more fun.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's accurate. And there's sometimes if you listen, there's a little bit of like melancholy in there, but it's
Oh yeah.
uh, but yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I don't want to get like I don't want to be dismissive of people that are like going through some funk.
Yeah.
And we've heard the term toxic positivity,
Mhm.
and there's some truth to that. Like sometimes it's better to just sit in like what you're dealing with and like work through it than just try to pretend that everything's fine. And I believe that. But this project, at least for me, is an opportunity to like take an hour or two in the evening away from whatever's been bumming me out, or try to unplug from my anxiety and ADHD and all these squirrels in my head that are like, just like driving me to the brink, and just focus on something that I enjoy and that makes me laugh. And I love that feeling like you get a good groove going, or a good melody, or got a beat going, and all of a sudden it's all starting to come together, and I just get like really excited. But yeah, thematically it's pretty goofy, and I think it's funny. It's like the fourth thing I've done, and it's actually like getting a little bit of hype, and then like Steadfast offered to put it out, and I'm just like, it's funny that my least commercially accessible material, and at my age, seems to be getting a fair amount of hype, which is like, I find it comical, but I'm enjoying it.
Well, you sort of have to, because even though you're considering it the least commercially accessible, I just told you in the beginning, to me, there's very danceable aspects to this. And although there is a severe sense of humor that is a through line, I think Haunted House is a very, like, there's an overwhelming, overarching sense of dread and depression baked right into that song.
You're getting chased out of a house by ghosts. That ain't good.
Right. And you approach it in a way that, even though maybe it's like a wink and a nod thematically, it doesn't sound that way. It doesn't sound like that's what you're trying to put across. It feels sincere.
Well, it's cool. I'm glad you get that out of it. It's kind of like why am I blanking? What's the movie franchise that it branched off a billion other franchises? It's got like The Nun and
oh yeah, The Conjuring. I was gonna bring that up because there's a famous haunting involving those people from my neighborhood.
So like if you go to see The Conjuring, it's a really different vibe than if you go to see something like a lot scarier from the 70s.
Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes my songs are sort of like that, where it's like ultimately, like, you're going, it's a good time, but I'm still like putting the effort into presenting it as professionally as I can with like recording it in my basement and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what point I was trying to make there.
That's fine.
I'm in like a brain fog. I stare at schematics and build things all day.
So do I.
I build guitar pedals.
Oh, that's amazing.
I work for a pretty well-known company, but sometimes when I get home, like, my brain is so foggy that it's hard. Like, I think people might think I'm stoned, and I'm not. It's just like I haven't given my mind a moment to rest, so it takes me longer to form points, and I talk in circles a little bit.
Mm.
But I'm not going to be self-conscious. I promise myself I won't do that tonight with you, and that I will just have fun.
You should, because that's like the entire oeuvre of the show. But when you're staring at wiring diagrams and worrying about soldering diodes in the correct locations, it tends to play with the mind.
Yeah.
I'm a pipe fitter by trade. So,
Okay, yeah.
I do the very same thing, just with a different material, but we're all moving energy from one point to another. Um, I have friends in that industry. As a matter of fact, Earthquaker
Oh yeah,
is the name of
they're
the
great
company.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jamie's rad.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
And there's just something very very altruistic about the people involved in that specific area, because they're all musicians.
Yeah, well, it's like it's an industry. Like if you're gonna get a job building or doing that, or you're likely to be a musician, or if you're not, you're somebody that is just not going to survive in an office setting.
Yeah.
Like the guy that owns my company is this like this mad scientist, Steve Albini kind of guy who's just like intelligence levels like way out there, and then it's kind of like this lady who does a lot of painting and artwork and computer stuff, and just a total artist, like doesn't even own a cell phone, and like dug up all the lawn in her yard and just planted like wildflowers, and like and then another guy who's just a total guitar wizard, and like none of us would survive a week in a corporate job.
Yeah.
And I think that's really common across the industry. I've got a lot of friends who build guitar pedals or build synthesizers because we all kind of get to know each other at the trade shows and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Have you been to NAMM?
Yeah, I don't do very well at NAMM.
It's flooded with people, man.
It's flooded with people, and it's like nonstop talking, and there's like always like 40 basses slapping, and I have a hard time focusing if there's sensory overload. And so like I even remember I was on tour with my friend Justin, and I was playing guitar in his band, and a couple of the people in the entourage were a little bit younger, had never been to Times Square, and they're like, we want to go to Times Square. So we all went, and I just remember like my friend Clay was with me, and Clay must have just seen my eyes just glaze over, because he had to like physically hold onto my arm and just kind of like lead me around because there was so much like stimulation and movement and people and lights that I physically kind of like quit working, but didn't even realize it. My friend just sort of grabbed me and just like led me, and so if that gives you any kind of insight, like how my brain works and like,
well, yeah,
I struggle at NAMM.
Yeah, because like I'm the type of person that around Christmas time I can't go to a mall because I want to get into the smallest space my body can occupy and rock until everyone goes away. There's just something about being around the bustling great unwashed that makes me want to fold into myself.
Yeah, it's pretty relatable. Like I feel like I can do it for a bit, but then I hit a wall.
Yeah. And
then once that wall is hit, it's just like, get me out of this room immediately, or like my head's gonna break.
That's how I found hardcore.
Yeah. Well, hardcore is perfect for that because it's pretty close knit, smaller shows. You're gonna know most of the people at the shows, and it's high energy, and if you're running around, jumping around with your friends and dancing all silly, you might get a few seconds on the mic, and you're just letting off a lot of energy. So I think hardcore is good for people.
Absolutely, especially when considering most of us are socially inadequate, and you're trying to find your tribe, and sometimes you just want to be around people who aren't going to want to grill you. You can be together, but you're all enjoying the same thing, and you don't want to talk. You just want to like experience something. It's the perfect venue for that. That's what I loved about it. That's why I gravitated toward it in the 80s and never left. But I think there's another aspect to all of that too. Maybe not so much with the new hardcore kids. I don't know that much about them because I'm so far removed from them. But all the artists tended to gravitate towards this relatively simplistic tribal music.
Well,
You-
I'd have to say, I haven't traveled a lot in the last few years, but Minneapolis has this strong scene right now of really young bands,
Mhm.
and most of them are just phenomenal. And there's a lot of hardcore, but Minneapolis has always been a town where like there's cross pollination. Like way back in the day, you'd have like the Rhymes There hip hop groups playing with like Dillinger 4 because it was just like, hey, we got to sell out this room that fits 1,000 people, and we know D4 can draw 400 or 500. We know Idea and Abilities can draw 400 or 500, so they team up.
Yep.
And I'm not saying like Dillinger first started writing rap songs or anything, but like,
Well, no, but you're talking about two very vibrant and still very prescient indie scenes that are two great tastes that taste great together.
yeah. So like, but there's kind of this new generation of really young punk and hardcore adjacent bands that they're just doing. I'm just like blown away. Like they're great bands, and I feel like their shows have a little bit more of a vibe of like a little bit. I mean, like I just feel like hardcore's always tried to be community oriented, but sometimes it could get a little bit macho or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's kind of like this new breed of kids coming up where like everyone's just there to party and have a good time and jump around, and like it really like warms my heart seeing bands with like 20-year-old kids playing like these giant amps that are the size of refrigerators that are like making the building rattle.
Yeah.
Because for a long time there were a bunch of bands where it's like or they're just a bunch of people that graduated from one of the music schools around here. And so, like, if I'd go to play a show, if my amp was past, like, 1, they'd be, you need to turn your amp backwards against the wall. I'm just like, no, it's a rock show. Like, it was, like, really frustrating. And there's that for a while. And you'd go see a band that was just, like, too polite. The bands were too polite. And I'm not saying you should be mean, but it was too... It was less rock and roll and more like watching golf on stage.
Mm-hmm.
It was just... God. But like now with this new breed of bands, they're like super loud and they're like really good, really talented. The shows are energetic, like the whole room's moving and jumping and people are singing, and it's so exciting to watch.
I'm not one of these old guys that's going to shit on Turnstile for getting huge.
I love Turnstile, and I'm not afraid to say it.
They're fantastic.
Yeah, they're good. They're catchy. They're kind of I remember when I was like 14, 15, like, the kid who lived out in the middle of nowhere bought a Green Day record, but because that kid bought a Green Day record, that kid bought a 15 record or Not Ivy record.
Yeah.
And then from there started, so like, like I'm not gonna give Turnstile a hard time. Like, if anything, like Turnstile's gonna like provide an outlet and an opportunity for kids who live in the middle of nowhere. And I think people will go to their shows, and then when they're at the show, they'll see other people and they'll be like, oh, what's the hoodie that guy's wearing? What's the t-shirt that girl's wearing? And they'll remember it, and then they'll go look up those bands on the internet. And so I don't know. Yeah. Like Turnstile, sure, they're very like commercial or whatever, but like they're good at what they do, and I'm not going to on them.
They're a poppy 311 influenced version of Snapcase.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate way to put it.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up 15 because legitimately about 2.5 hours ago, I had to run to the grocery store to get my son popcorn because if he doesn't have his popcorn every day, he loses his mind. He's 3. So he has his things. But I hadn't listened to the album or song Lucky by 15 in a long time. So I decided I was going to listen to Lucky for the first time in forever. And if you remember the song at all, it's about his best friend committing suicide.
Yeah, it's a pretty dark song.
I lost it. I was crying in traffic. I was crying in traffic
Right?
like flashing back to seeing Jeff Ott on stage playing this song, and I don't know what it is that I connect to so much with that song, but I really, in this moment, felt it in a very visceral way. And I'm thinking to
Yeah.
myself, man, everybody else in traffic must think I look like a dipshit, but oh well.
I'd venture to guess you're probably not the only person that cries in traffic while listening to a sad song.
Yeah, but probably one of the few that is listening to 15 and crying.
I mean, whatever, it's
Yeah.
a pretty personal song, and everybody has lost a friend to suicide, so it's relatable.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to wonder too, like, I wonder about the other. I wonder about the people who aren't like us, don't have that, I guess, frame of reference to a music and a culture that champions being in touch with these emotions. Because, going to punk shows, it was 100% okay to go and tell your friends, like, dude, I was crying listening to 15 last night. But most men my age are Trump voters and very, like buying into this macho bullshit and listening to this terrible music and not, I don't know, they're just not connecting with themselves in a really sincere way. I wonder about them. I wonder, like, dude, are you okay? I almost feel bad for them because I don't know if they are okay. I don't know if they could listen to your record and find, the underlying sadness in Haunted House the way I do. I don't think they'd catch it.
They might not connect to this like kitschy subgenre, but they might connect to like Pink Floyd or something.
I don't even know if they'd connect to Pink Floyd. I think they would just be like, yeah, I like Comfortably Numb, but they never listen to The Wall.
I don't know. I want to know why people reach the conclusions they've reached or form the opinions they've formed. Now, look, I'm not going to sit down and have tea time and a sandwich with Richard Spencer.
Right.
But if I have some friends that are like straight up like hardcore socialists, like we want communism, like legit and mean it, and they, they've studied it deeply. And I have other friends who are like very conservative, like live in the country and go to church every week, and it's like you can usually tell if somebody is generally decent. Like I think more of us are alike than we're led to believe, in the sense that like some guy in the country went to work, doesn't love his job, but put the hours in, wants to go home and see his kid.
Yeah.
And I would say you maybe experienced something very similar today. And so like how did you versus this guy in the country reach such different conclusions as far as like where the world's going or what to do about it? And so I am really interested in just sort of like how the human mind works, and I am interested in like power structures and psychology, and I've always been fascinated with stuff like the Stanford prison experiment, and and like how power messes people up, and just I don't know, like I really want to give people the benefit of the doubt, and this is gonna sound really corny, but like just like know what, like where their heart's at, and like,
well, yeah,
like if I don't know, I had a couple like friendships like really damaged during the last election.
Me too.
And a couple of those people, like we were able to kind of get back in touch and sort of like make amends, but we don't really like keep in touch like we used to.
Yeah.
But then I got to thinking about like I don't think so-and-so is a bad person or a bad father or anything. So like, why are we at each other's throats? And I also think there's a lot going on where it almost sounds conspiratorial, like the Art Bell. No, but like I think working people, like I think if like really really wealthy people who have a lot to lose can keep us hating each other, then
Yeah.
they can keep doing the shit they're doing because we're too busy fighting each other.
Well, that's the kernel of truth in all of this. If basically, and Ice-T said this in a record many, many years ago. If you're born of color, if you're born poor, we're all in this same kind of like boat. You know what I mean? And if we were all to figure out that we have far more in common than the upper 2%, we would actually figure out that we're the ones with all the power because we have the numbers, we hold all the cards, and then we can go and take from them everything that they've taken from us. I'm not speaking on a revolutionary level here in the slightest, but what it comes down to is we all do kind of want the same sort of thing. We want to provide for our families. We want to we all want kind of like the in various stages the right things, you know, food, shelter, our loved ones near and taken care of, and health insurance and very basic things, and everything else is the cream. But these people who are at the top, they want to keep us as a diaspora, okay? They want to keep everybody apart from one another, so we're all terrified of each other and hate each other. Because if we all decided to say, you know what, we're all together and you're the enemy, and really saw that for what it is, and that is what it is, we would topple them, and then we'd be running shit. And true democracy is the bane of democracy. You know what I mean? Because we would actually be calling the shots, running the show, and these oligarchs and fiscal monopolies would no longer be dictating what the 40-hour work week looks like and things of that nature. And it's not a conspiracy. It's legitimately what our country is founded upon.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be kind of a pendulum that goes back and forth where, you know, one force is going to push a little too hard and there's going to be a reaction, and then they're going to push back. And then at some point, I don't know, it goes back and forth. I don't know. I don't have like the mind of a sociologist or a revolutionary or anything like that. I try really hard not to get caught up with the emotions of the culture war, because I think sometimes when you're thinking too heavily, when you're like very pissed off or very sad, sometimes you assume the worst of people or make bad decisions. If I'm angry about anything, if I'm super pissed off at work, sometimes I might even leave early that day because I don't want to do something or say something that's going to be detrimental in the long run. So I try to apply that logic to other areas of life as well. I don't know. I don't have any easy answers, and
There aren't any.
yeah. But anyway, yeah, I was kind of. Oh yeah, I think I rabbit trailed because I Well, I don't really relate to this like the Trump crowd driving the F-250.
Yeah.
I am genuinely curious, like what got them there, and if there's anything we could agree on at all.
Well,
like, where that would go, and
you know where it starts really, acceptance. Because on our end of the spectrum, you know, I think we all kind of became snobs in a certain fashion, and not willingly, not for any good reason, but we all started to feel like, you know, even though we know we're doing what's right for everyone, we're flaunting that almost like You're on the wrong side of history. You need to do this. Forcing the truth on anyone makes them shrink from the truth. Okay. And here's the perfect example. When everything was going down, when we were locked down on COVID, my son was born directly before COVID. So I'm home raising my kid in a vacuum and watching race relations fall apart while I'm in this interracial marriage with a mixed race son, terrified for my son. And I see these demonstrations going on, and one in particular, there's a group of like white power Nazis marching through a town, and everybody's like, the sharps are there and Antifa, and they're throwing stuff at them and getting in their faces, and these Nazis are still walking proud because they're getting pushback and they're thriving on it. And then one gentleman, a man of color, walks up to the biggest, baddest looking Nazi and says, "Man, why do you hate me? I don't hate you. I don't hate you at all. I have nothing against you. Why do you hate me?" And the Nazi looked at him and said, "Man, I don't know." And he's like, "Dude, don't hate me. I don't hate you. Let me give you a hug." And he hugged the guy. And this guy hugged him back. I don't know if he changed his mind for life. I don't even know if he changed his mind for the day. But there was no fists thrown. There was no violence. I think if we were to greet these people with a little more love and a little less of an air of superiority, we'd catch more flies with honey than we would with vinegar.
Maybe. Yeah, it's a tough one. Like, obviously, I'm a big believer in defending oneself.
Sure. I'm not saying we're going to turn the other cheek like Jesus, but what I am saying is maybe not attacking it like in a self-righteous manner. This gentleman put aside the weight of chattel racism, chattel slavery, and the racism that was incurred from it generationally, and walked up to a white man who thought he was superior to him and said, "I don't hate you. Why do you hate me?" And the guy didn't swing at him. He didn't. He just, I don't know. And that's the real answer. The real answer to all of this racist shit, and basically all of the problems in our nation, is they don't know. They've just been taught that.
I've got friends who are like, the cat is getting so grouchy with me. You could probably hear her meowing.
Yeah.
I've got friends who are pretty staunch activists, and like a couple friends who are like trans friends who are just like, "Hey, people on the left need to quit the kumbaya stuff and embrace violence and learn some martial arts and learn how to defend ourselves because there are people that want us dead."
Yeah.
And so, like, when I read stuff like that from friends who are targeted more than I am, I kind of see their point too.
Sure.
So but yeah, I mean, like, if
well, nobody's trying.
I mean, obviously, anytime you can bring boiling tension down in any situation, I think that's better than people, like, there's a whole thing like, well, these people showed up and they're spewing a really hateful ideology, so we should just like pound the crap out of them. If you do that, though, then like what if they pull knives? What if they pull guns? And all of a sudden, like 4 or 5 people in your group of friends have a bullet or a stab wound. Yeah, that's a tough one because, like,
well, you're not changing hearts and minds with violence, and I understand from the trans point of view. I have friends. I have a friend who I'd grown up with, who transitioned far before it was like really like when Laura Jane Grace came out as trans. My friend Jalen had transitioned probably like 8 years before that, and was dealing with small town Pennsylvania's backlash to that. So someone like that, yes, when they're saying like, the left needs to nut up or shut up, I get that. But
And
I'm
Alan, like I don't think I neatly fit into a political category. My general thing is like let people be people and like don't fuck with people
yeah,
and stick up for the underdog. That's
yeah,
just sort of been my MO. Like I don't really campaign for any particular candidates or anything like that. But if I see somebody getting like picked on, my instinct is to be like, leave them alone.
yeah.
But anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
No, that's quite all right. But I think kind of what I'm driving at is if you are a marginalized person, then yes, you probably should do something to defend yourself. I'm speaking as allies because I'm a cisgendered Caucasian man in the United States. I am the least marginalized human on earth, but I'm an ally to the marginalized people because I will stand for them. I don't need to go out and fight these people. What I really need to be doing is caucusing with people who look like me to help them steer in a different direction. You know what I mean? Because if I go at somebody and say, no, you're fucking wrong, fuck you, their first instinct is going to be like, no, fuck you, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah, so basically you lose any opportunity to have dialogue, and they dig their heels in even more.
Exactly. And I think the lesson to be found here is like, if you are like me, a Caucasian cisgendered man, if you want to be an ally, try to win hearts and minds, not notches on your belt for fist fights, because you're not winning anything that way.
I think like people got to be sincere too. It's just like, I think there's a lot of posturing. Like a lot of people will be like, to making a big noise and talking from a pedestal, and like, I think a lot of it's like, look at me, I'm one of the good ones. Look at me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it should just be more like, hey, I'm going to live my life, and I want to contribute to a world where people aren't fucked with for being themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about me. it's more about just sort of like just being like a decent person.
Yeah. It comes down to your definition of what us means. When you say us, does it mean me and the people who look like me, or me and everyone else? When your view of us is the entirety of the human condition, you're probably on the right track.
Yeah, I mean, to at risk of like being called a hippie or something, like it's just like I love people. I want humanity to flourish. I want I want people to like get along and find ways to work together instead of finding ways to fight. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's probably like unrealistic, and but yeah. Anyway,
I think you have a pretty specific viewpoint of it too, having been in Minneapolis when all of this shit went down too.
well, I mean the cops here are militarized, and there's just no de-escalating of situations ever, and so it's, I don't know. Minneapolis is pretty messy right now, and anyway.
And being so culturally rich musically, you do have so many great hip hop groups, punk groups. Like Think of
Husker Du is kind of like
Husker doing the
Big
replacements
Prince.
and Prince and Atmosphere and like there's so many touchstones there that there's that yin and yang where it's a cultural hotbed for art, but also a hotbed for police brutality and militarized action against citizens. It's scary, is my point, and
Yeah, it's like
you
it's
got to
like
wonder.
it's like this problem that has plagued all of humanity. It's like going back to the Stanford prison thing we are talking about earlier. Like it's just like people get a little bit of power and they get drunk with it. I mean, we say the word cops now, and you think of this person in a blue uniform in America, but cops are also like cops were everywhere all across history. They're basically the people that are representing the state that are quashing the common person.
Yeah, the Nazis, the Stasi, like everyone that basically is the right arm of a fascist oligarch is a cop. In all truth. But I don't know, like, how familiar you are with my show and the way I do things on this show, but the premise of it, and the only question that is a common theme that recurs throughout the body of this work is the same question. It is, what is it that terrifies you on an existential level? I ask that question of every artist for the very same reason, because what you're terrified of is at the core of your creativity, at the core of your being. It makes you who you are, morally, socially. That's why I ask it. So I would like to posit that question to you.
Yeah. What am I terrified of at my core?
Yeah.
Boy. I wish I had some time to think about this ahead of time. But that's on me. I don't know. So sometimes I'm just worried that society's gonna fall apart. And you look throughout history, like no civilization lasts forever. You have different societies and kingdoms, and people all over the globe that have come and gone, and some have been very advanced, and I think like human nature at its core, it can be pretty dark, and when it's fully unleashed, and there's no checks and balances, and there's no if people aren't incentivized to keep themselves in check, like what happens? I don't know if incentivize is the like you've been a good boy, you get to keep your house, you've been a good boy. But
that's what it comes down to, though. That's legitimately what it comes down to. We're all a bunch of children, and we want dessert, so we've got to eat our vegetables.
Yeah, but what do we do when we run out of vegetables, and then what do we do when we find out there's no dessert either?
Well, what happens is Nazi Germany. What happens is what's currently happening in the former Soviet Union. When people figure out that there's no reward for behaving in a civilized manner, the wheels come off, and we become cannibals. And that's the terrifying aspect of the human condition. And it makes me wonder, am I capable of it? Probably. Yeah, probably. I could probably be a monster. What keeps me in check is my love of my wife and my children and my mother and my love keeps me in check. If you took everything I loved away, yeah, I could probably become a monster very easily. That's, I think, what we're seeing. People who don't put enough stock in the things that they love to be decent people. And that's what's really fucked up about existence right now. You need to find what you love, even if it's not a person, even if it's not something with anima. It could be a piece of poetry. It could be a movie. It could be whatever. As long as you have something that you can feel affection for and feel some kind of spiritual resonance with, you're okay. When that becomes untethered, people get fucking crazy. They get crazy, and we see it. And when you worship money as your god, you empty spiritually.
Sure.
You know, and that's a recurring theme. That's how you get Donald Trump. That's how you get Putin.
Do you it's been so long since I've read them, but I think it's slightly touches on the concept of like the problem of evil, and there's secular authors that have written about it, and there's spiritual authors like C.S. Lewis that have written about it, and I think I'd be interested in finding some of those authors that have talked about it and revisiting some of those thoughts, because just you talking about it and us having this conversation is just like, okay, we're not the first people in history that have dealt with this. How have other people dealt with this in the past? How did they get through it? Because there's these things called books, and I feel like our generation and those younger than us have forgotten about them. But they have these words in them that were written by a lot of people that went through a lot of shit, and that's came out on the other end. And so I'm kind of curious, like, how they view it afterward, and would they have wisdom that would help us in the present moment? Because we're on a ship at sea at night in a storm, and there's no lighthouse.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the vessel, the ocean-bearing vessel that you're currently on, was written about by Mr. Conrad, and it is Heart of Darkness, and we that's kind of where we're at right now. And I think what people do need to revisit and realize is Henry David Thoreau. When Walden came into press and went to mass press, civil disobedience was tacked on to the end of it. Read that. Please read, Aldous Huxley. Please read George Orwell. Like, these are very basic things that you can get when you're in high school, if you're there to pay attention to it. And they're very basic. They're not. It's not. It's great literature, but it's not inobtainable. You don't have to have a degree in English lit to understand the subtext. It's all very out in the open. Just take a look at it, examine it, and see if that applies to our life right now. And if you don't think it does, maybe you're the one with the problem. But we got very far afield of music, and I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine.
When I get on these tangents, I wax poetic, and it's probably I'm up my own ass probably, and I apologize for it.
Oh no, not at all. You should apologize for like being passionate about like the world being a mess and caring.
I think art reflects all of that, though, too. I think your art reflects all of that, not in a way that Zach De La Rocha would have in Inside Out or Rage Against the Machine. But I think it reflects it because you're trying to get away from it. You're trying to create a pocket where you get to have fun and be happy. And you're not doing it in a bubblegum way. You're creating a little world for yourself. Not everybody does that. It's actually very residents of you or very Devo of you.
Well, there's that, but then also, like even though like lyrically, I'm not covering like really heavy themes.
Mhm.
This project hasn't played any shows yet, but like generally when I'm in a band and I play shows, my MO is to have fun. But you know what? Like I'm not gonna have fun, and you're not gonna have fun, and that person's not gonna have fun if there's some people in that room that are making it not fun.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like I avoid preachiness and I avoid buzzwords because I want to in action say the things that matter to me instead of getting on stage and regurgitating some post that I read. But it's just like, okay, we're gonna play a show. I'm gonna do everything I can to make that environment fun.
Yeah.
And so that might play into like the venue I choose to do the show at, the other bands that I ask to play. And it's sort of my kind of chill way of trying to like contribute to a world that I want to see, where it's like, hey, whoever shows up tonight, like with the exception of the Proud Boys or something, whoever shows up tonight, like they're gonna have a good time, and I'm gonna make sure that like everybody here is welcome here and we're having fun together. And that's more important to me than getting on the mic and going on some tirade. But you know, there's someone else where the tirade on the mic is more called for because they're more targeted or something.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to like stay in my lane, but also like just create a vibe that's good for everyone.
And you don't have to preach to everyone or beleaguer the point to stand for something and cause change. Just creating an environment where people can have a good time together.
Yeah,
can
I'm
make all the difference in the world.
Yep, and I'm a very like one-on-one person. I'm pretty like introverted, and but yeah, I mean there've been times where like I'm hanging out with someone and they use certain language or something, and I was like, hey man, have you thought about when you say that, like that would really hurt the feelings of so and so that we hang out with? Oh no, I haven't thought about that. I'm just like, well, I don't want to like yell at you, but just like, just think about it.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Oh, okay. It's like I kind of feel like that's where I seem to have more impact, is because I just hang out with one or two people at a time mostly, and I really do like put a lot of emphasis on like building relationships with people, and I think if you have a relationship with someone, you're gonna have a stronger impact with them, and the other way around too. Like someone might share an article with me or have a discussion with me, and share a viewpoint that I may have like overlooked. But yeah, I think that's the stuff that happens in relationships. That's the stuff that happens in the work of getting to know someone and loving them through their quirks and their weirdness. And God knows I have mine, and
we all do.
Yeah.
But that's
we got heavy. I thought we were gonna talk about like robots and rats, but this was cool. I dig it.
Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your viewpoint, when people come on this show, it tends to get heavy.
I'm totally cool with that.
I apologize for it if
Don't.
anyone had been.
Why are you apologizing for like being yourself and caring about things?
I know, but sometimes it's just time to have fun, and I try to feed that as well. But
You're
we
a
we went down that rabbit hole.
you're an intelligent guy who has these thoughts constantly going around your mind, and you need to talk about them with people so you don't gnaw your own arms off. And
I am trying to get out of that trap, but there's I'd be remiss not to kind of repeat that there is an intrinsic sense of playfulness to everything that you're doing, and I mean it's present on this one as well, but it's a great little escape, like watching a trauma movie, or like just kind of like reading like a C.S. Lewis, like you're going into another a place that doesn't necessarily apply to your current situation, but you get to enjoy it, you get to immerse yourself in it, and it's a great little side road out of your current purview. You go there, you inhabit it for a while, and it lets the pressure off, and that legitimately is as important as listening to, like I said, Zach De La Roca preaching, or
yeah, you need both.
you do.
I firmly believe that. I think you need to read and or listen to social critiques, but you need to have fun and laugh with your friends or laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
It's also not good if you can laugh with your friends, but you're always mean to yourself.
And that's probably the greater lesson, like being a good friend to yourself is allowing yourself to have a good time.
Yeah.
By yourself.
Don't take yourself too seriously.
No.
Yeah.
You find yourself up your own ass when you do that.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Like I was saying, I was really embarrassed about the name Tyler. It's like, why did I pick such a dumb name? But now I'm really glad I did, because it's like it's a check and balance. Like say like people are starting to really like this record. It's a good reminder to me every time I see the name. I'm just like, keep in mind, this is Toilet Rats. Like don't take yourself too seriously. Don't get an ego.
Yeah. But what's great about that is there's no, it kind of wipes away any kind of preconceived notion about what you would sound like. You hear Toilet Rats, you're thinking, is it crust punk? Is it like, whoa, like what is it, like Adam and his package? What am I expecting here right now? Yeah. What's coming down the pike? It doesn't smack of anything in particular. It's just it's a goofy name that's fun for you.
Well, it's good,
and you get to define it.
Yeah, and it could change from record to record depending on the mood I'm in.
Mm-hmm. But I also kind of enjoy the fact that you went the Led Zeppelin Danzig route and just started numbering the releases.
Yep. Yeah, it just made sense. I was trying to think of like when I did 3, I was just like, what am I going to call it? It's the third thing I'm putting out. I'll just call it Toilet Rats 3, even though the first 2 aren't really numbered.
Yeah. And
then I made this one. I'm just like, what should I call it? I'm like, well, obviously it's 4.
And people tend to, even though I disagree, think that Led Zeppelin 4 is the best Led Zeppelin record. Toilet Rats 4 is the best Toilet Rats record by far. This is the fucking cat's pajamas of the Toilet Rats discography. And I think it is because you went to places that you didn't necessarily go to before, and it sounds like a complete journey. That's fun for me.
Well, thank you so much. It's really flattering, and I accept the compliment. But it's also, and I'm not trying to be like a corny, self-deprecating person here. I worked hard on it, and I am proud of it. but like I'm not a 20-year-old kid anymore, and the fact that anyone's paying attention to anything I'm doing now, I'm humbled and I'm thankful for every single person that took 20 minutes out of their day or 25 minutes or however long it is and listen to it. It's just like,
Well, after 3, people started really paying attention, though. Like they really started paying attention. You started getting traction, like in a real way. It seems like people are really they're waiting for this.
no, it's fun, and I'm really thankful for like Matt Traxler too, because I feel like he he really kind of helped like legitimize it. Like it's like Steadfast is a good label, and I know that guy has kind of like particular tastes, and he doesn't like a lot of stuff, and
Yeah.
so it was a really big compliment when he was just like, "Hey man, how do you feel about me putting this out?" And it's like, wow, yeah, that'd be really cool. So yeah, I'm just sort of in awe and really thankful for anybody that checks it out. I'm really excited about new friends that I make through the project, and it's cool. It's cool to have like little boosts in different stages of your life.
Life is kind of like it's this ever unfolding, story where you think you've apexed, and that's usually in your late 20s, early 30s, where you think, okay, it's never going to get better than this, and I'm just going to toe the line thereafter. And then you start to hit these highs that you didn't see coming, and they're the most rewarding, because that's when that's like the true test of your actual spirit, to see what really matters to you, speaks to who you are morally, spiritually, mentally. And something as altruistic as just creating a record and having it loved or enjoyed by people, when that fills you in a really particular and really massive way, that just, it's like, yes, you really do kind of deserve it then. If you are that humble in your acceptance of the love for it, then obviously you deserve that accolade, in my opinion.
Well, thank you so much. I had fun making Toilet Rat songs in the basement when 10 people were listening, and I will continue to have fun making them. And if more people decide to hop in and join the party, more the merrier in that sense.
What's the physical release going to look like? Like, is it just going to be cassettes, or is it going to like open itself up to vinyl, or how's that going to play out?
The pre-releases sold out really quickly,
Mhm.
and we want to keep those special. They had those like Pepto-Bismol colored cassettes, but Matt and I have both been getting people saying, "Oh, I didn't get one, crap." So
Yeah.
we're talking about maybe doing another run of them in a different color. It's hard to say. I don't envision myself buying a van and playing a million shows. So it'll be hard to justify pressing vinyl, but if there's enough people that express interest in it, we could maybe do like a limited run, like lathe press or something. It's hard to say. I'm just doing it one stage at a time, because Matt's been incredibly cool with Matt generally puts out like reissues of legacy bands.
Yeah.
So he kind of stuck his neck out on this one, because it's a new project by somebody who's not like well known.
Mm-hmm.
But the response has been good. I just want to be really careful that like he doesn't go in the red on my silly little songs. But yeah, if it keeps growing and people want vinyl, who wouldn't want their music on vinyl, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm one of those people that missed out on the Pepto-Bismol cassette. So, there's if you were to press it on vinyl, I would dive on it for certain.
Cool. Yeah, we'll just have to see where that goes, because it's a little more expensive and risky endeavor, but it's not out of the question.
Right. So I think I kind of like to put a fine point on it and wrap things up. If you were to walk blindly into a situation where you had to explain toilet rats to someone going in blindly, and then like they were to come up to me, okay, you're in a band. What kind of band are you in? How would you like deliver an answer to that specific question?
Do you mean to like a normie aunt who has no idea what punk is?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Okay. Well, in a situation like that, I would probably say it's kind of like I would probably say it's sort of like the movie from some John Hughes movies mixed with the music from John Carpenter movies.
That's actually kind of perfect.
There's a little Breakfast Club, but there's also a little Halloween.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Especially, I would actually go past Halloween and be like a little Breakfast Club, a little bit The Thing.
yeah, I'll take it.
Because you go a little. The Thing is actually a darker soundtrack, in my opinion. Halloween's fantastic. It's iconic.
Yeah.
It's minimalist. I don't think you're as minimalist as you think you are.
There's some layers going on, yeah.
Especially recently, I think there's more The Thing. Even though like the main theme of The Thing is boom boom, boom boom. when it really builds to a crescendo, it does become multifaceted and it has a heft to it. It has a weight to it. I think this record has that kind of weight to it.
Cool.
So, I can't wait for people to hear this whole thing. I've heard it. None of my listeners have heard it yet outside of the single. So
yeah, we're dropping another single on Valentine's Day. That's gonna be Oscar and Ellie.
Okay.
So that'll be up. There's a website that's gonna premiere it, and Tim from Sweet Cheetah has been like really awesome with kind of helping. Yes, I know you work with Tim too.
He's one of my best friends. Yeah.
Yeah, Tim's really basically like Matt and Tim and me are like this little like trifecta of rock and roll right now. They're both just being really cool about helping me make sure I cover all my bases and Tim generally wants his artists to contribute to a charity such as Catsbury Park.
Yeah.
I was on tour once and I was really homesick and I was missing my cat Audrey, who you met. And she's a black cat. And I walked over there after sound check and just sat on the floor, and then this black cat just walked straight across the room, sat in my lap, and fell asleep. So I was just like, I'm like, you're kidding? You're like, that cat knew I missed my cat. So yeah. I gave that place some money that night, and then ever since, and this was about 5 years ago, but ever since then I've always given them donations whenever I could, and so they're kind of and the one of the people that runs that place is like kind of an OG like bass player who played in a bunch of straight edge bands in the 90s. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a cool extra little like, oh yeah, this old hardcore bass player guy like saves cats now. It's pretty cool. So I always float them money when I'm able to.
That's amazing. Coming from like, I have dogs as well. I'm a cat person. And
I love them both.
I love them both, but I think when you're a cat person, you're a cat person, and that's it. My dogs and I have a very close bond, but I have an 18-year-old cat, June Carter cat. Her sister Priscilla Presley passed away, but June Carter cat has been with me for 18 years. I have a relationship with this cat akin to relationships I have with friends and family members.
I get it. I totally get it.
It's a spiritual thing where like when she dies, I'm going to be devastated for months.
Yeah.
Cats have something mystical that goes beyond what dogs have. Just my opinion, but I bond with them in a very in a very real and beautiful way.
Cats are rad.
Cats are rad. There's a reason temples were built for them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I don't want to like drag you out for the rest of the night. So I will cut you loose. But listen, next record comes along. Look me up again, man. I appreciate you coming to me. I'm usually chasing people down. I didn't have to with you. You came to me. It made it really easy for me. I didn't have to jump through hoops. It was just like somebody I like came to me. Awesome.
You're friends with Tim. You're friends with Stefan. So I'm just like, this seems like someone that I want to reach out to.
Yeah.
So, well, cool. Thanks for talking to me tonight. And I keep telling myself I want to apologize for my rambly ways or my slow delivery because it's just who I am, and I just have to live with it.
It's going to sound really, really on point when I edit it, so don't worry about it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, when this goes up, send me the link, and then I'll make sure you get a tape.
Thank you.
I had Matt set aside a few extra for me for like local record shops, so I'll save one for you.
I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. And yeah, thanks again. Send me a link when it's done. If you need anything from me, like links to the...
Folks, that was my discussion with Mr. Tommy Ratz. We had a fun time together. He's a silly, silly boy, just like myself, so we got along famously. Obviously, I had a great time with him. Obviously, I love this music that's playing beneath my voice right now. I strongly suggest you head on over to his Bandcamp, toiletratsbandcamp.com, as it were, and you can order the cassette. It's on Steadfast Records, for those who are keeping score of such things. This album's well worth your time. I enjoy every single second of it. It is energetic and creepy and fun, and it's everything I like about a good punk record. I think you should love it as much as I do. As you can tell by the quality of my voice and the less than smooth delivery of my speech, I am under the weather. And I apologize. He's been Tommy Ratz. I've been Peter. You've been beautiful. And this has been the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. Good night, y'all.